fourth. I think it's our fourth. Yeah. I just wanted to take a second to shout out to all of the teachers who made it to the room today after working a full work day and who are here to watch. And also, really, really exciting news. Want to give a shout out to our union siblings in the Cornell Graduate Students Union, who yesterday, after 2 full days at the bargaining table with Cornell, won on one of their huge priorities, and they won union shop protections. So we wanted to just acknowledge that that's a really, really huge thing that we just learned about today, and we're really proud of them. And then aside from that, just in some housekeeping, we have, for people who are joining us in the room for the first time, hopefully you have already signed the rules of the room, that you understand how to conduct yourself as a member of our gallery. There's note-taking paper to send notes to the table up there in the gallery. Our note runners today, we have Jen, and I don't see Carrie at the moment, but when Carrie gets here, Carrie is around. And Gary will also be note running. So just if you have a note that needs to be passed down to the floor, get it to either Jen or Gary, and they will get it down to the appropriate people. And we have Aurora and Gretchen taking notes, giving us a transcription and preparing our summary for our website in the future. Anything you want to housekeeping on your end?
No.
Okay.
Thank y'all for being here. Appreciate it.
So we have some updated proposals to review. So in your packets, and I took a big shout out to my friend Elise up there, who always reminds me to number my pages. It really, really helps. On pages in your packets, you have all of the new proposals. Pages 3 through 6 are the new proposal to codify what we currently have as the micro-credential professional development program. And David and Mary worked on this one together. So I'm gonna let them kind of give everybody the overview of what we did here collaboratively on this joint revision.
Would you like me to take it, Mary?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Yeah, so Mary and I did work on this together. Let me just get things near my face. So you can hear me. There we go. So we looked at the section of the CBA where these things would normally be located, did a little bit of cleanup. Fabulous, thank you so much. Ooh, I'm on now. Yay! Now you can hear me even better. Like I wasn't loud enough before. Did some cleanup on some of the language in there, simplified it, made it easier to read. Really brought down the graduate credit section to really say what it essentially needed to say, rather than being very verbose and kind of condescending. Right? Took what we already had for in-service credits, just cleaned it up. So again, it's easier to read. I did cut out part about the Cornell community committee. If anyone can tell me what that is and why we should have had it in there anymore.
Thank you.
Great, cool. Because literally no one I talked to knew what it was, so it didn't feel like that was an applicable thing anymore. So we cut that out from the in-service credits. And then what I did is I lumped graduate credits and in-service credits together into one category. Because while we look at the difference between the graduate credits and the in-service credits slightly differently at their onset, how they function for us once they're completed, it's the same, right? They get lumped, they get treated the same way. We count those credits the same way. We use those credits in the same way. So I put them into one category that I have called self-initiated professional development, SIPs. And then we took what we've been doing for the micro-credential program. We created a section for that, really just codifying the nature of the micro-credentials as intensive courses that are created by the district for the purpose of meeting district goals. And we've labeled them district-initiated professional development, or DIPs. So now we have SIPs and we have DIPs. And then I just cleaned up the language about how do you turn in your in-service credits? What does the redemption look like? And what are the limitations on what you can redeem? The notable piece here, I think, for the table is that we don't want to marry the district to a specific set of micro-credentials. We don't want to fossilize with these that we have right now. We understand that education shifts, it changes, and we want to be able to keep up with that. Right? So we didn't want to marry the district to just these. These are included as an exemplar of what this looks like. And as this is written, it leaves space for the district to change, adjust, add more if you'd like, with the note that if the district chooses to offer more than the 9 credit hours that are currently allotted to that district initiated, that it would trigger a reciprocal change to the total number of available self-initiated professional development hours to claim. That way, it keeps the incentivizing factor there for our members who have reached their maximums to continue to do that work, right? It does not mean that the district has to do it, right? That's well within your control. Just if you do it, we get a reciprocal change on the self-initiated limits as well. So as it stands, we have a professional in our district, in our unit, can submit up to 90 credit hours worth of self-initiated professional development and a further 9 district initiated, right? And so if the district said, hey, we're going to do 18 now, that hour number would shift up to 99. It would reflect that additional 9 that has been added on the district side. But that's what we got. Did you want to add more to it, Mary?
I do want to just add an appreciation for a person who does a lot of the record keeping for this, Sharon Warren,
Bless her soul.
who many of you email and does a lot. She does so much to track all of this. So I want to be, share her name and be thoughtful about that. And then I want to just highlight what you said, that we don't want to fossilize these. We want to have some feedback loop. So educators who participate in these, we're already seeing shifts that we need to make to some of the strands after their participation. And we do a postmortem on their experience. Maybe the text, well, maybe we're going to outgrow a text that we're using because each micro-credential has an anchor text associated with it. And we want to be able to be responsive to that.
Yeah, and as we have it written, it just comes back to say, hey, this is the exemplar of what this looks like in scope and scale, right? So anything that would replace one of these things should be of similar magnitude.
Does anyone have any further questions, clarifications, or are we ready to announce tentative agreement on this? Okay, we're announcing tentative agreement on this.
Yeah.
Yay.
Hey,
Thank you.
love moving forward.
Thank you,
on
Mary, for
this.
working with me on this.
Well done.
I appreciate it.
David, you're not done yet.
Might.
So we have 2 ITA proposals, but these proposals came out of our work on some of the other joint revision work that we've been doing on some of the district union relationship. So we identified, as we were talking about, like work protections and progressive discipline and things like that, that we are currently lacking in contract language around the use of district email for union business. And as we started talking about that, we're like, also like, oh, PA systems. So David has given us 2 really simple, straightforward proposals that, nobody here has seen until you got the agenda. So open to discussion, but David, why don't you just give the folks at home a little taste of what we're talking about?
Sure, let's start with the email and I'll just read the text because it's not that long. The district will permit the association the use of district email for the purposes of communicating association business, intermember union communications, or for the purpose of delivering news or communications from our affiliated associations, NICET, NEA, or AFT.
Yeah, we want to have some time over the next week to look at it some more, maybe offer some additional language if needed, but it sounds good to us. Can you say that last part again? Any union
News or communications from our parent
news or
organization.
communications?
Yeah.
Now,
right?
if the communication is, I'm asking a question where I probably shouldn't. Is the communication, could that be some type of advocacy, some type of stance? What would that be? Because there's some things that I can't say on my district email that would be considered advocacy or a stance. And I would want to make sure folks knew that in the language we would propose here as well.
The folks could or could not.
Could not.
Okay.
I can't sell something from my side business or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah, that wouldn't be the type of thing that would come
A
through unique
good example of
communication.
something that I could think of in the past week that would be awesome to get out to members was we got updated guidance on the new APPR system.
okay. And if NICET was telling every school district in the state to vote down budgets, and that was communication, would that be permissible?
Yes.
But again, for the folks, we're writing language that would cover a lot of stuff.
Sure.
So I guess we would have to add a clause in there that would speak to, as we think about this over the next week, some language that will
Sure.
keep folks from doing something that would be,
By all means, take it, come
Yeah.
back next week. I'd love to hear just some additions, but
Yeah.
you know, it seems relatively clean from the.
now while NICET may not say vote down the budget, an individual unit could, or not in support of the budget, and you'd be using district email.
Right.
We would, but also we don't do that either.
Okay, so I am hearing that next week we can expect just some kind of counter that will speak to some of the restrictions to keep them in
Yeah.
line with like general district communication
Right.
protocol. Obviously, there's also, David, did you look at the district communication protocol, like the board policy to see if it addresses any of this?
I would have to look
in
at,
any-
I would have to. Look at
Yeah,
that.
and that's what I'm
Yes.
referring to some of that stuff.
Yeah, so
yeah.
maybe we all give it a quick review of board policy, give it a review of that and just,
Cool. I love the idea though.
Yeah.
Thank
That'd
you.
be great, right?
wonderful.
And
So I
then,
could send an email to ITA members like that, because it would be in our distribution list too.
Well, this is just for you, for us.
For you.
So what brought this about is that there was a discipline case
Okay.
where a teacher had sent like a message of like, don't forget that there's a meeting today. And then that became an inappropriate use of district email that was part of a major.
I'm well aware.
Right.
I'll hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Are we good? Thank you. I'm sorry.
right, and you know, it's that type of thing that we're looking to avoid, right? We're not trying to sell people like side businesses through it. We want to be able to say, hey, this is something that you should know about. Here's a heads up. And also a lot of our members, as much as we try to use our personal emails for most of our work, if a member has an issue at work, they want to reach out to the union, they're usually just going to grab the email that's handy. Right, and we want to make sure that they're protected with that use.
Cool.
and anything sent by our system is probably foilable. So just,
Yeah, and right, something that we certainly keep in mind as well.
But it also might be just thinking it through, it might actually be good in the revision to also maybe make it explicitly clear in the contract that
Everybody. gets it.
communication sent is available to be read by the district and is foilable.
Yeah, like, cool.
I mean, I like a contract to be as explicit for brand new people as it can possibly be.
Shall we look at page 9?
Please.
This is a similar proposal. I mean, it's in the same vein, right? It's gonna go in the same section of the CBA. This is for the use of the public address system. The district will permit the association the use of building public address systems during non-instructional hours for the purpose of announcing association meetings. After school, we're having a union meeting. We want to say, hey, we're having a meeting in this room,
date, time and place.
right? And again, during non-instructional hours. So it'd be, have to be before or after school. Again, we don't want to interrupt the flow of the academic day by any means, but that's all that one
We'll
says.
look at that one too and bring it back. Thank you.
Okay, our next item is we had originally put forward a proposal around protections against AI and outsourcing. That as we talked about it in our opening session, we all felt needed a little bit of work. So David, Gladira, Bob, and I worked together on this joint revision, and we think we got someplace good. So this is really it. This particular piece of contract language was originally written to talk about BOCES, and under what conditions ITA work can go to BOCES. We are seeing currently that we also needed to address when and how to enter into contracts with outside service providers when vacancies can't be filled, and then also talking about AI. So what we did here is we broke it up into those 3 sections so that each is addressed individually rather than the way they were kind of all lumped together. We started with the hiring of outside agency workers to fill vacancies. And what this language does is it still makes it clear that, well, and we started with a preamble, just recognizing that the work belongs to the ITA and that both sides respect that. But the hiring of outside agency workers to fill vacancies addresses the district responsibility to do an active search for people to fill the positions. That when that active search has been engaged in, but certified and highly qualified teachers cannot be found to fill the vacancies, the district reserves the right to enter temporary service agreements with outside agencies, recognizing that sometimes we just need to provide services that we wouldn't be able to provide otherwise. These agreements shall not exceed the length of a school year, because we also understand that sometimes those service contracts need to be a year in length. And even if we could find an amazing person partway through, we wouldn't be able to break those contracts. The district shall notify the association in writing of all positions being filled through outside agencies so that we have a list of, these are the positions that we will be looking for someone for next year. And they shall remain active job postings with the expectation that we would fill those positions if a candidate is found when it is reasonably practicable based on having existing contacts with other groups. Then Bob, did you have anything to add to that?
Maybe just a clarification that it could be an individual contract, independent contract with an individual person.
Yeah. I think our language does that. Then we maintained the information about the transfer of district programs to BOCES, but did add a sentence that transfer of programs or personnel is used to enhance student programming, not to reduce the FTE afforded to the association. So
let me check on that one too, because I think the BOCES was created in order to have some shared services. And I think under ed law, there are situations where districts can transfer programming to BOCES. What would happen, it's been a long time since I looked at this, but I believe that teachers from within the district that was being transferred to BOCES would have to be hired by BOCES, and then their contract would have to be worked out between the 2 collective bargaining agreements. But I'm not, we can't say yes to this tonight, but just give us an opportunity to take a quick look at that, make sure the language isn't something that could be challenged with a, we have, by the way, I don't think we have any intention of transferring full departments to BOCES, but we just don't want it to be in contravention to state ed law.
Okay. And then we were excited about where we landed in the discussion of artificial intelligence, and technological developments in general. So I'm just going to read it. Both the district and the association highly value the benefits of human connection in the classroom, but also understand that ever-evolving technology has a place in education. To that end, generative AI and other technological developments will be used only to supplement, support, and enhance teaching and learning. They may not replace human teachers or reduce the total FTE afforded to the association.
I love what you did there. And that last sentence is capturing a lot. I'm thinking about some things we just had to make some hard decisions about last year, particularly in languages based on minimum class sizes. And let's say this year we were deciding to support some young people that couldn't make up a class of 15 or more, but support some young people with a virtual experience that may be considered being supported by artificial intelligence. Reading that, I would see a grievance coming.
Mhm.
So I think this is another one I want to spend some more time. I think we all want the same thing, but also don't want to create a situation that none of us can foresee and create a situation where we can foresee that will be a bit of a tough one. Because I'm getting questions right now about offering virtual opportunities for courses that we can no longer offer, including driver's ed. And
Virtual driver's ed sounds like a real.
trust me, I know.
terrifying Notion.
I know.
I'm very scared.
My son is watching Cars, and Cars 3, they have a virtual driving thing. But anyway, all that to say, let us spend some time. I love what you've attempted to do there. And I think that's very broad. That could also set us up for something that we've already experienced. Because if I were you, if I was sitting there, I would be grieving it. If we would offer a virtual experience to support young people, when a year ago we had to make some reductions to the FTE because of budgetary concerns.
Right. Okay. So do we think that we can have revisions to review next week?
Please, yes,
both of those?
yes.
Okay. Moving on to page 13. This is a revision. I guess it is a counter proposal. I don't know if it's a revision of an original, but we revised. It was a proposal that we made, and this also moves us into our like main agenda items. It's on the list of the main agenda items. So we had put forward a proposal that gives teachers a little bit of layer of extra protection around teaching controversial subjects, around, you know, kind of in our current political climate, important to really know our teachers are really asking for protection that teaching the mission and vision of the ICSD, understanding that, you know, can put you in the public eye right now, that they want a little bit more of codified rights, that the district will have their back, that they have the right to teach that they have the right to make those decisions. And we've had many, many conversations in that vein with teachers, together with board members, and we are proposing a revised proposal. So ignore the top, which is the original proposal, but what we kept in was the revised proposal. So this would read that teachers have the right to study and present facts concerning society, sciences, and all other branches of learning in the classroom. Here's where we made a revision. They are guaranteed the rights of academic freedom and individual conscience and expression when selecting materials for their classroom and curriculum. Instructional materials should have educational value, be aligned with New York State standards and district approved curriculum, be culturally and linguistically responsive, and suitable for the age and maturity of the students. So doing all of the things that we know are good pedagogy and that line up with what we are already doing. To this end, teachers are trusted to arbitrate these values, provided that their selections do not violate district policy or New York State education law. And that's the whole revised.
Beautifully stated.
Thank you.
And if I may, if we can have some more time with this one too, because I would wish to potentially add more language. And I'll say this unapologetically, there may not be a person in this room who wants this more than me. As a person whose name, their actual name and address has showed up in every national publication one can think of over the last 2 weeks, questioning what it is we do with regards to teaching academic standards, implementing a culturally responsive, sustaining framework, and seeing the humanity of all the young people we serve, because that's what we're doing. And this language, which is so expertly written, says that. And as again, I want this more than anybody in the room, because I want this to be a part of our legacy, to show and to say to everyone that we are leaning into this, because I know there are people who are probably thinking that they should be afraid, or wondering if we should continue to do this, or wondering if some type of a statement or law may impact an individual educator. And I'm here to say that won't happen, particularly with me here, and particularly if it's in the language. So I want this, but I also want to go even further and to highlight how this community has spent probably 2 decades, particularly over the last 15 years, building towards this. And because we're tight, because we've done it well, we can stand in front of folks at all levels, including folks who sending death threats, and say we're doing it the right way, in a lawful way that meets the needs of all of our young people. So I'm all for this. And if I can ask for humbly an opportunity to add even more language to speak to what we've done historically to be in this space that we're in, to be unbothered. We've been reared for this, as my mama would say. We've been built for this. This just it didn't happen overnight. This is not new for us. We couldn't have put this in here in my first couple of years, probably, because I couldn't guarantee that our folks were ready to do it in a way that was always lawful and always going to meet the challenges. And when the hate comes, we can stand tall and say, we're going to keep doing it. So that's what I would offer up there. And if there are educators who are listening or who are thinking or wondering if the heat is going to come to you, most likely it will. As I've defined what courage is, I thought they were talking about it. As we define what courage is about a commitment to some moral principles. We have committed to seeing the humanity of all of our young people and embracing it and making sure that we engineer experiences connected to the academic standards to see that beauty and that joy. That is a commitment to some moral principle, because as I'm hearing and as I get these messages, not everybody believes in that. We have an organization that have committed to doing that. And when you commit to some moral principles and you know that can be dangerous or that will elicit some resistance because it's coming. This is not new. For over 100 years, when we have provided access and opportunities for everyone in a real way at scale, the resistance has been fierce. So when you know something is coming, you can plan for it. And when you know the danger is coming and the resistance is coming, that's the definition between somebody saying they're courageous and someone who is actually courageous, because the courageous people do it anyway. So as I say to folks, the heat is coming. If you have as a person who feels all that heat, it is here. And we're going to do it anyway. And putting this in language, because as my mom also said, when you do this work at scale and you're successful doing it, you won't probably survive it as a leader. But what you hope you've done is inspire somebody to take your place when you're gone. And I see this as an opportunity to codify it will happen when I'm gone. So again, I'll bring something back the next time that sort of captures my last 2 minutes in about 4 or 5 sentences.
Wonderful.
Thank
We
you.
are there for it.
Yeah, and one of the nuances, I think what you've just heard is Dr. Brown speaks for the entire executive team in terms of what it means to teach in Ithaca, New York, and what Ithaca, the community, the broader community, has stood up for decades and decades, right? And we want to support that. And as Dr. Brown said, strengthen that. One of the things when I read language, though, is to prepare for when things aren't going well. And when, not that we're pushing against resistance that we all would push against, but that we have a situation in a classroom where we hadn't anticipated and we need administration, we need to step in. The language here seems to take the academic freedom and sort of remove it from those natural protections that are in the contract already. If the administration needs to stop something, it clearly would be something the union could grieve, right? So I'm thinking in terms of the language we come back with, it strengthens what we all want, but also allows us to step in collaboratively with the grievance process, even to temporarily stop something that we hadn't anticipated, and then work through a process where we either end it permanently or we support it in a different way or we allow it to continue. But right now the language seems to just sort of take it out of that processing.
One of the things that we grappled with in the writing of the proposal and in the revision of the proposal is how to give people the freedom to feel confident in what they're teaching while also giving the protection for what to do when something goes wrong. So,
Right. Yeah.
you know, I I hear that we are all on the same page. You have the expertise of years and years of sitting in your seat to be able to add that language that can speak to that piece too, because we, this is in line with our values. And also when something is not in line with the collective values, what do we do about that should also be part of it. So that
Sounds good.
makes sense. I look forward to seeing revisions next week and moving forward in this direction. Moving into some of our proposals that we were going to talk about last week, and I'm looking around to see if our guest speaker has made it, and I'm not seeing our guest.
The speakers here is just set to arrive sometime between 4:30 and 5. Which
Between
should be
4:30 and
super.
5? Well, then why don't we skip, I forgot, this is where I stopped numbering pages. Why don't we skip proposal 24 and come back to it when our guest speaker gets here? So proposal 26 is a proposal around the guaranteed workspace for all educators. So we currently have many, many teachers working in many different types of positions. We have language that speaks well to classroom teachers, but that doesn't really do enough to cover the space and use needs of people like our related service providers, our social workers, our counselors, people who work with kids who have tough confidential conversations and may or may not have an office, things like that. So we have a proposal around guaranteeing classroom facilities that meet the needs of the things that we're doing. So it's fairly long. Well, it's not super, super long, but it's a little bit longer than I want to read all out. So maybe how about we take a minute, read, ask questions, discuss, because we so far have only both just seen this, but haven't really talked it out. So it's proposal 26. It's
Page 46.
it says page 46 at the bottom.
Yes, sir, in that other document.
Yeah, yeah, you got the new ones. The other ones are in the original proposal book.
Yeah. Mhm, mhm. Yeah, this one. Mhm.
We good.
What?
Everybody had a chance. Hope y'all won't.
Are we just good?
No, I think
Okay.
we're ready to proceed.
Is that an affirmative? We're agreeing?
It's a
I'm
lot.
working off from your larger,
Oh, okay.
so it's page 37 on that, I think, but.
Oh,
It's adjusted.
I just-
oh, yep, because because the version that I pulled it from came from a different version.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to be sure we're on the
Yep,
same.
sorry. No, but it is the guaranteed workspaces for all teachers.
yep,
Great,
good.
okay.
I guess I'll just start it off with a question on number 2, all related service providers must be afforded a space, be that a classroom or an office. That it seems logical in terms of, it's not an exclusive space. Yeah, it could be a dual use.
No, we currently have related service providers who share a space, and then their schedule is so that like one person is in there at this time, and then when they're out doing a push-in service, someone else is in there. And we have also had related service providers who have been given a space that was like a cubicle behind cardboard walls in a large communal space. We have related service providers delivering services in stairwells. And especially for the type of services that those related service providers, I mean, like, the OT doing skipping on stairs makes sense. The school counselor having a confidential conversation about a student's social emotional health in a stairwell is not appropriate. So making sure that people have the space to do the work that they need to do in a way that really honors the needs of kids.
And someone on the instructional side can also jump in here if I'm reading this wrong. Fine and performing arts, tech, and art teachers will be able to provide their own designated classroom for instruction. I think in some buildings that is like not a possibility. Like I'm thinking there's been some music done on the stage in the cafeteria and elementary school. How does that fit in?
I mean, we're not big fans of
Yeah,
music.
we aren't either, but-
We are not big fans of the violin lessons happening on the other side of a curtain while students are in the cafeteria
Yeah.
eating lunch.
No, we aren't either, but it's like, I think it's in some situations an impossibility right now.
I mean, one hand washes the other.
Yeah.
If we make it an impossibility, then it becomes a problem we have to collaboratively solve. If we don't make it a problem, if we don't put it in the contract, then we can continue to say, well, that's a problem, but we'd love for it not to be, but we're not forced to solve it. So I think in some ways, this is a document that can hold us accountable to creative problem solving.
Yes, and as I'm looking at the chair of the facilities committee, that creative problem solving could mean millions. I mean, we could be potentially looking at rental spaces or additions to buildings. I think we all, as a person who taught PE in the cafeteria and did reading instruction on the stage, I know this is tough. And also know these things happen because of a lack of available space on occasion. And if we put it in this document, then again, I'm the one who gets the grievances. So the resolution to a grievance would be to do something. And I would be handing the board a significant bill one way or the other if we codified this language. Again, maybe we don't stop the conversation today, but I just want to make sure everybody understands the complexity of around the ask and why we aren't just jumping, hey, yeah, we're going to do this tomorrow, because it could cost millions. And I'm speaking for you, Jill. I'm just looking at you. Please don't comment right now, but I'm looking. And I know how you would be asking me all the questions that I come to you with this bill. And yeah.
I mean, we have union siblings who have similar clauses in their contract that say things like the district will make every possible attempt to. That is a possible way to get at that. But I think that, really for us, that piece of giving kids the education that they signed up for and deserve is also giving them adequate space in which to learn and giving our teachers adequate space in which to teach them.
Let us massage this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I want to add So if there are certain situations that are problematic in this moment in time, I'd like to have a conversation about those rather than waiting for the contract. Some of these proposals really highlight a shared problem that we're trying to solve. And I don't know if we always have to solve it through the contract, but there might be a conversation that can happen between now and then as we're auditing our building. So this one's hard, thinking of demographic projections. What I want to share is where we all leave to think about this one and return to it our next session. I don't want an unintended consequence of pitting certain programs against another. And there are some things as we're thinking about our models of inclusion and what needs students have and what spaces we might need in the future. I want to be thinking about that as well. But I would highlight if there's an immediate need that we get together on,
Yeah.
certain
absolutely.
buildings, because our buildings are very different across the 8 elementary schools. Some built in 1953, some built in 1894. So many of the educators who walk through those and service providers who get to see those, I would.
Yeah. So, yes, and I will definitely outside of this room get you you and Jake Chapin, our grievance chair, together because he has been helping to collect. We have been on our most important issues, and this really was an important enough issue not only to rise to the level of a proposal, but this was like a really very critical issue for our teachers, especially for those teachers affected by it. I know that, a lot of this we're looking at, really it's service providers and specialists who tend to be the people who get themselves put into these situations. And it really creates a perception of value for those educators. I'm going to take a little privilege here and just tell not my story, but it's the story of my home. My husband is certified as a technology education teacher. He's also currently an elementary school teacher in our district. When he went to school, he went with a passion for technology after being an ESP in our district and finding that field and finding passion there and really enjoying working with kids through that. He went and got a technology education certification, finished school, got hired, he was in a BOCES position that was itinerant, 3 different schools. The itinerancy was hard, the multiple supervisors was hard, but ultimately for him, what made him say, I love this field and I can't do this, was always being in a basement and always being the last to be thought of when schedules were made, finding out that an entire schedule changed and nobody bothered to tell him because they forgot that the technology teacher needed to know. The value that our educators feel when their spaces are inadequate, when they're treated like a second tier of teachers, is really demoralizing. It doesn't show value for them. And then the kids who are in those spaces feel that too, and especially as we look at our related service providers working with some of our most vulnerable kids, to not even have space in which for them to do the work that they need to do really speaks to how much do we value that experience for them. So there are facilities issues that need to be overcome. And this is a really, really, really important personal issue for the people who feel this, that shouldn't be considered only from what are the capital improvement implications of it. It's really important to our members that they feel valued and that their students feel valued. And we look forward to reading some revised suggestions next week. And I am going to shift gears and welcome, we have a guest educator who's here. And also this is one of David's areas of specialty. So as our former health and safety chair, this became kind of a passion project of his. So I am going to let these 2 lovely people talk about creating and furnishing designated lactation spaces in our school. But first, I'm going to remind everybody that this is also a New York State law.
So we have a proposal. It is proposal 24, that the district shall provide designated lactation spaces that are not classrooms or shared workspaces and are in compliance with the New York State law around the spaces we provide for lactation for purposes of expressing milk. Caitlin, you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah. Hi,
You can move the microphone so you don't have.
Oh, yeah.
to
Awesome.
sit.
Thanks. Perfect. Hi, my name is Caitlin Moss, and I've been a humanities teacher at LACS for the past 14 years. I'm a native Ithacan that attended BJM, ACS, and graduated from IHS. Most importantly, I'm a mother to a 6-year-old son who now attends school in the ICSD. I'm proud to be a lifelong member of the community and raise my son here. I want to share with you about my experience as a new nursing mother in the ICSD. Prior to welcoming my son, I feel that I took the time to put a plan into place so that I could responsibly parent him and return to work at full capacity. The administrator at the time made it difficult for me to plan my maternity leave, and in fact tried to pressure me to take a longer leave than I was financially prepared to. With the support of my union, I returned to work as planned when my son was 3.5 months old in January of 2019. Unfortunately, I found my time as a nursing parent at my building extremely negative and stress-inducing. Prior to returning to work, I communicated with my administrator about an appropriate designated area for expressing milk and never received a response. At the time, I did not feel comfortable following up because I was very unfamiliar with the administrator, who was new. I went against my instinct and did not invoke my rights based on state law for this private area. I instead came back to my building and tried to find times and spaces I could use. By this time, I was exclusively pumping, so I needed to do so at frequent times throughout the day to maintain my supply and feed my child. I started out trying to use my classroom to express, but it was a shared classroom, and despite putting a privacy sign on the door, folks would frequently use their keys to come into the room. I experienced more than once adults and even children walking in on me while I was trying to have private time to do something my child needed to survive. To further complicate things, my shared classroom was not available during periods of the day when I needed to pump, so I would go to a number of other less than ideal spaces. Once, as I pumped in our school black box theater, I was walked in on by my principal and a work crew. Other nursing mothers in my building have had the benefit of being able to take a longer time off or a personal office space, but I had neither of these things. I chose to stop nursing/pumping altogether when my son was 6 months and before the end of the school year, in large part because of the hardships the situation caused. Perhaps if I had received any kind of support or even a kind word from my administrator, things would have been different for me and my son. Not only was I never asked by my administrator how they could support me, I was in fact reprimanded for arriving to my building during and not before my first period planning period. I tried to explain that I was staying late every day and planning at home, but was told I needed to arrive at the correct time from then on. I did not feel that I could speak up then to say that I was expressing at home during that time because there wasn't a safe space for me to do it in my school building. I did not, nor have I ever received a professional caution or reprimand, and was in fact told repeatedly by my administrator and members of staff that my work was impeccable. I sometimes feel it was in fact my important job as a mother that suffered during this time. I now feel ashamed that I did not assert my rights those many years ago. I thank the ITA for giving me the space and support to speak now.
Thank you. Dave.
Make sure you use the microphone, David.
Let's seal this back and discussion. And I think the proposal is very straightforward.
Yes, we agree. Absolutely.
Okay, so we're doing it.
Unequivocally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yay. We're gonna give a minute and we're gonna let Caitlin go take a seat.
And thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
We appreciate your coming. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge all of the moms in the room who sat here listening to Caitlin nodding, and I was watching people who were hearing their stories. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I see a lot of movement, so. Why did you mention this?
I would just like to give like a heads up. I do intend to write another proposal. While this proposal specifically addresses the issue of space, there is also the issue of time, right? And ensuring that our parents who are expressing are provided with adequate time in their day that is protected for the purpose of expressing milk. So, so I will have a proposal for that next week as well.
Just a reminder, our working agreements where new proposals can come until April 10th, I believe. So just as people are thinking about the things that come up as we have these conversations. Okay. We have a couple of proposals on the table that relate to securing workers' compensation days for on-the-job injuries. And I know that part of what we said was to not talk about big money proposals until we've made some decisions around salary. And I almost pulled these out of this portion before we talk about salaries today, but then I said, you know what, let me leave them in and just see whether we want to table it or whether we want to take it on now. So our ITA proposal around workers' compensation days for on-the-job injuries does two things. We already have language that when a teacher is sent home by the district superintendent or designee due to a health hazard, the teacher will receive full salary with no loss of sick leave. So, you know, something happens, you get sent home for the day because it's physically unsafe for you to be there, you don't lose that day as a sick day. We are seeking to make it clear that the building leader can send you home, not just the superintendent. And that on the job injury, if you get hurt that day, you get to go home that day, and it's not coming out of your sick day to have to take a sick day to go. Or if you don't have sick days, you have to work hurt or at a loss of pay because you got hurt on the job. And then the second part is that currently in New York State, you get hurt on the job, you fill out workers' compensation forms. The paperwork is extensive and tedious. I have done it myself, and ultimately, by the third time I got a stack of gigantic paperwork, I said, I'm not hurt that bad. I don't care anymore. I'm not having ongoing problems. And I just stopped filling out the paperwork and started thinking about my place of privilege as a native English speaker and reader. The paperwork is extensive. You file lots and lots of paperwork. You then wait for the Workers' Compensation Board to make a determination of whether or not your case is actually workers' compensation and you were actually hurt on the job and it is the responsibility of the employer to cover it, or whether it was your fault and the employer doesn't have to cover it. Our proposal is that in that interim period between the time a worker is hurt at work and the time we get a determination from the Workers' Compensation Board, that we code those days as workers' compensation days, with the express understanding that if the Workers' Compensation Board finds that the claim is not valid, we then retroactively change the coding of the days to treat them as personal, to take them from personal benefit days rather than having them be workers' compensation days. So that's our piece of the proposal.
Yeah.
We're okay with this?
Yeah, I think we're okay. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We then, I also pulled in because it seemed relevant to talk about this. There is a personal injury benefit absence due to on-the-job injury proposal that you submitted that would reduce the workers' compensation full salary benefit from 3 years to 1 year. And that we might use sick time in those times and things like that. at this time, without having reconciled a lot of our salary issues, we are not ready to talk about this. We did also ask for the workers' compensation summaries. We don't need names, but how many workers' compensation, who's been out, how long have they been out? What was the eventual, did they eventually come back or not for the past 10 years?
Maybe that's something we could look at independently and then bring back to everyone, just because even when we think about identifying information, there's not a lot of people. So even to say in public, last year, there's one, like, I don't want to get too loose with folks' data.
Yeah.
But I'd be happy to have you or a representative meet with us and we can go read through that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
That feels respectful to the people who've been in this situation to do it that way. We're just trying to get a sense of the scope of how much of an issue is this and what is the overall cost of the issue. So we'll table this for future. And I'm going to invite my friend Gary down to the table. Gary has helped work through the question of mandatory annual ENL professional development, and is prepared to speak to it. Do you want me to read the proposal or do you want to just go?
You can read the proposal first, that'd be good.
Okay, so our proposal on this is that, so it is important to note that there is a legal requirement for teachers holding professional certifications. So anyone who has received their certification after February of 2004 is required to engage in ENL training for a total of 15 hours every 5 years as a part of their continued teaching and learning requirements. Teachers holding this professional certification must complete this training and have a record of it to be in compliance as a part of this requirement. We find that very few teachers are actually aware of this requirement and that it would be helpful if they were reminded annually of this requirement. And then we also, in talking with our colleagues, know that most of our colleagues receive this training through the district professional development plan in the district where they work. So our proposal is that every year, the district will notify holders of professional teaching certificates, and we'd also be open to notifying everyone that holders of professional teaching certificates must complete 15 hours of ENL training every 5 years. The district will provide 5 hours of professional development training devoted to ENL support during at least one superintendent's conference day each year. And we're okay with that being part of a choice, because not everybody will need it, although it's best practice for everybody to have it. And the district will offer additional ENL specific training as an ongoing part of the annual professional development plan. And I'm going to let Gary speak to the importance of this.
Okay, yeah, like Catherine said, it's a relatively new requirement. And as a professionally certified teacher, I wasn't really aware of it because it came on board after the certification process. I was alerted to it by one of our colleagues, Chris Martin, and he emphasized the importance of being in compliance with this. And we were just like, okay, but we had no idea where to get the training, how the training is done, what it really even is. And we just think it would be really helpful if the district kind of put that into the works, into frontline, have availability, have the training there. So to embed the ELL training required for teachers with professional teaching certificates into the scheduled PD days. So I think Catherine already covered it, but it's like 1.5 hours, 2 times a year for a total of 3 hours a year, 15 hours over 5 years. That's the requirement. The benefit, of course, it ensures that teachers that need this training have the opportunity to get it and are reminded of it. And the district will benefit in keeping everyone certified and compliant with New York State law for professional development. And that's all I really have. Does
Perfect.
anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Gary.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm looking at Mary because it's her department.
Great. Agreed, yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yay, thank you.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, from where I sit is part of the requirement, and this just enhances the communication out.
Wonderful.
Just a point of processing, I think that in terms of the language here in the contract can indicate that we will provide notice of their obligations under the law. But in case the hours change either up or down, maybe we'll do language that doesn't indicate the hours. The communication out to staff can certainly indicate the hours of the law under whenever that happens.
So I think that there's two ways that we could approach that. We could right now just take out the 15 hours and the 5 hours and just cross them out. Or we could amend it via MOA if the law changes. The thing that I like about keeping the hours in is it allows us to better use the contract as an education tool for members. To take it out, then it becomes vague, and then we have to go and we have to find it, and we have to bring a supplemental document into it when we could just as easily put it here, knowing that we have the mechanism to amend via MOA at any time.
Yeah, we could, maybe some languages just, I don't have it right now, but essentially it'll say, comply with the law, which is currently 15 hours, or is, from time to time may be amended. So if there's an amendment to the law, the contract recognizes that it's the law that controls whether it's 10 hours or 20.
Would something like adding a sentence that says, should the required
Required hours exceed
yeah,
the
should the
standard that we have here?
should the required hours exceed these standards? Sorry, I really, really love writing live in front of an audience.
I mean, it's unusual that it would go down, but if it does,
Yeah.
could probably want it to reflect.
You would but deviate from,
I'm inclined, if it goes down, this is 5 hours of E&L training for our staff that work with a very diverse community. This provides best teaching practice to our population. I don't think setting a cap that exceeds the minimum requirements is in any way harmful.
Yeah, I think especially considering the population who lives in Ithaca, we tend to need E&L services.
We've got diverse learners.
Yeah.
Our training should reflect that.
So should the required hours exceed these standards? Honestly, we can amend all of this via MOA if anything changes. I mean, it seems like all it's saying is that we're acknowledging that if something changes, we can amend it. And we also have a mechanism to amend it anyway. So I don't know that it's necessary to put in an additional sentence.
I agree.
Okay. Great. Love it. Okay.
And we are in agreement, yes?
Yes, we are in agreement.
Well done.
Okay. And that brings us to our last of our issues before we take a short break. So we currently have contract language around salary and assignment notices. Basically, when will teachers find out, what is the reasonable expectation of when teachers will find out what they're teaching next year? So all of our buildings benefit from including teachers in proactive master scheduling for multiple reasons. Teachers who are involved in the scheduling and know proactively what they're going to be teaching are better able to co-plan curriculum. They're better able to set up their classrooms for the needs of their learners if they know ahead of time what supports, tools, and barriers exist prior to the first week of school. Many teachers currently report that they do not know their teaching schedules until late August. And this is many of our secondary teachers where there's like multiple pieces of scheduling that fall into it. Many of our elementary school teachers, especially the classroom teachers, know like third grade. Our special educators don't often know at any level, like who are the kids on their caseload, what grades are they going into before they go on summer vacation. Or summer vacation is kind of a weird way to say before their 10-month contract ends and then they have a break until their next 10-month contract begins. So many of our teachers report that they do not know their teaching schedules until late August, which reduces their opportunities to engage in relevant professional development. We do most of our professional development in August. So I've worked with numerous people who've said, I'd love to do curriculum writing work over the summer, but I don't want to come in and write curriculum for a class that I may not be teaching. And not knowing what they're going to be teaching is really essential to knowing what they should be professionally developed on. Secondarily, changing of bell schedules and class lengths reduces the ability to build upon best practices from the previous school year. As a teacher who taught at DeWitt Middle School for almost 20 years, I think I taught on almost 20 different schedules, and that those schedules could have been anywhere from a 35-minute period to a 97-minute period. Every day, every other day, a block, a skinny. Some years there were blocks and skinnies. It is so difficult to design curriculum that meets an ever-changing schedule and then to modify curriculum in that way, because a 90-minute period is just not the same as two 45-minute periods. So making minor adaptations or changes to curriculum and designing materials, it's all part of, if we know what we're teaching, when we're teaching, and how long the time that we have in which to do that teaching is before we go away at the end of the school year, we are so much better able to serve our students and be prepared for teaching and learning. Coming in at the beginning of the school year to find that out just makes you feel like the race started weeks ago and you showed up late. It puts you at that feeling of always playing catch up from day one. So our proposal keeps a lot of the language that we currently have, because we currently have that as soon as practicable and under normal circumstances, not later than June 30th, people will know. But it's the practicable and under normal circumstances piece that has given way to people learning in August what they're going to be teaching. So we are proposing that teachers will be notified in writing of their salaries from the coming school year. We already do that. Within 20 days after salaries for such coming school year have been agreed upon by the parties. This is the letter of reasonable assurance with the projected salary for the next year, which we already do. And I got lost in my sentence. Teachers will be notified in writing of their salaries for the coming school year within 20 days after salaries for such coming school year have been agreed upon by the parties, and by February 1st for any year in which salaries are not to be negotiated. So if we're not negotiating salaries, we know well in advance, especially when we have predictable salaries, what those will be. So getting those letters out a little bit earlier, which is also already in the collective bargaining agreement. And we're all kind of looking like, oh, do we do that? We don't. So as soon as practicable, but no later than June 30th, returning teachers will be notified in writing of their teaching assignments for the following school year by the building principals. We can change that to leaders, or their immediate supervisor, because sometimes it's not your building leader. This notification will include the school or schools to which they will be assigned, the grade or grades and or subjects that they will teach, and any new or atypical classes that they will have. So really stressing that when it's new, you should get more advance notice. When the curriculum is new, you should get a little more advance notice. And then it gives so what if we don't get there? If a returning teacher is not notified of their assignment for the next year by no later than June 30th, they will be provided 2 paid professional days to accommodate this change. And then if you flip it over, I did make one little revision here as I was reading it today. If a teacher is notified after June 30th of a grade level of course assignment change, any affected inclusion support teachers will also be provided 2 paid professional days to accommodate the change. That's a change in when we originally wrote it. It was like the teacher and their co-teachers, which is what we always meant is just the teacher and their co-teacher get 2 days to plan. But the way it was reading, it almost made it sound like the classroom teacher got 4, which was not the intent. And that is kind of where that lands.
Can we I think we all agree. And when we put this in writing, it's for everyone at all times. So with that being said, I would love to have a counter to it, and maybe some adjustments to some of the dates and some of the language. We will get to a place where we agree on this. But I want some time for our team to talk to principals and others. As a former elementary school principal and a middle school principal, this will be a tough one to drop on me, knowing how the end of the school year, and you as a middle school teacher, how the end of the school year works. And now as a superintendent thinking about, we didn't have a final budget until late June last year. And so this would have already had us in grievance land. So I want to be able to write this in a way where it accommodates for the extreme circumstances or situations that we know are going to be inevitable.
Well, so I think that 2 of the things to think about as you do that, and we're fine with a counter for next time, but 2 of the things to think about are that this wouldn't actually apply to everyone because it only applies to returning teachers. We can't tell a new hire that we hire in July by June 30th what they're going to be teaching because we haven't interviewed them yet. We haven't hired them yet. So first,
I got you.
new people, and our new people already get, additional training. What this language really does for us, like we would love June 30th. That's the gold standard ideal, but it provides that paid time to make the adjustment, so that you're just not always feeling like you're doing catch up.
And we've had returning teachers decide in July and August that they're not returning, which could
Right.
throw a monkey wrench into the entire schedule.
Right.
So I would want to account for that too, unless we can hold people accountable to coming back no matter what, life experiences or whatever happens in their individual lives. Because I mean, there are a lot of moving parts here. And when we codify this, it's for everybody.
Right.
And it could be no choice of the administrators. Without the administrator having any say whatsoever, it could throw a monkey wrench into all of this. Can I use that term? That's a bad term to use. Yeah. Anyway, let us work on this a little bit and come back to you with a counter, and
Okay.
let's talk about it. And I want to be able to talk to some other folks too.
Okay.
Cool.
So in our agenda, we have gone through updates. We've gone through our priority 3 discussion. We just had it, got some things settled, and you all have some work to do on some counter offers. We talked about a couple of pieces that were lingering from previous situations. We did the progressive discipline proposal is still in joint revision. Bob and I are meeting on that tomorrow again. It's moving in the right direction, but it was not ready to bring to this table. So we are hoping for that to be ready for next week. And that brings us to a scheduled caucus so that we can take at least 30 minutes to, but we scheduled it for 30 minutes and then come back to continue the discussion about salary. And also, depending on the length that discussion of salary takes, knowing that we're here until 8 o'clock, there is the next big topic that we feel we need to address is all of the questions around the length and structure of a school day.
Oh, boy.
And I don't think that, as I looked through all of the many, many, many proposals, I did not see a way that looking at each proposal individually without taking a big zoom out, big picture look at what are we trying to do overall was. So I did prepare all of kind of a summary of like, what do we currently say about this? What are the proposals on the table? And some big discussion questions for us to grapple with. So like the last part, after we talk about salary, I really envisioned being more of a collaborative discussion of values than actually getting into proposal details. But if everyone is okay with it, 30-minute caucus.
Can we just say 6?
What time is it right now?
It's 5:21 now.
40 minutes.
6 o'clock seems like the
o'clock.
perfect time.
Got to get our popcorn ready.
Okay. Yeah. So we will return at 6 o'clock. ITA members, you are welcome to join in our caucus and our caucus room. It is directly across the hall. So. Excellent. So I'm gonna start off. We don't have a salary presentation in a break from our short-standing tradition. But I do have a lot of feedback to share from our members who, share it through me as their way of bringing it to the table, around salary and around our needs for salary. And the first thing that I want to start with is giving everybody the briefest little bit of social justice labor history around step and lane salary grids. So as we've been having all of these conversations, as we've been really clearly expressing our need for competitive, attractive, predictable, incentivizing salaries, so many brilliant minds in this room among my teacher friends. Someone went down a rabbit hole of where did step and lanes come from? How did they emerge? What is their history? And, we know from our work with Dr. Nguyen that histories matter and that language matters. And that's why it's really important that we all understand that step and lane systems, which have also been called single salary schedules, came on the heels of the civil rights movement as our workforces were becoming integrated as a way to solidify equitable salaries for women and people of color entering workforces that were predominantly dominated by white men prior to that. And that for us was both just fascinating history to learn, but also really important to bring to this table in connection with the work that we do as an institution to really create an equitable, anti-racist institution, to really honor that history that we have as a nation, where we were, how we got there, how we can make things different. So for us, we just wanted to bring that to the table. And our researcher who learned this is happy to write you a research paper if you want to know more, but they really felt that it was very important that we all know where this comes from. And for us, why the name, calling the system what it is really important. There's the history piece of the name of it. There's also the element of this is a salary system that we believe will help us recruit teachers. But if teachers don't know what it is, because you don't know what the name means unless you're already part of the institution, it's not working as a recruitment tool. So that's just speaking to the name, speaking to some of the things that our members learned about these systems. We also heard, I know that Brian met with Dom and Zach, and Carrie you all met. And there were some questions around really making sure that we are doing our due diligence to fully represent all of our members. And I just want to make sure that everyone here knows that since receiving the district's counter proposal on the 12th, we have held an all-member meeting where all of our members had access to the counter proposal, and we had a robust discussion of hours. We held parking lot meetings on the 14th, the day after we had been to the table. We held a long meeting this Monday with our contract action team who are elected to represent their colleagues. We have absolute confidence in our democratic process and that we are adequately speaking for our members and really speaking for the will of our body. And we appreciate asking that question. Like that is our job. And the accountability is important. And, we appreciate that and just want to let you know that we got it. We're doing our job. So as we had all these robust conversations with our members, the general vibe that people are picking up is that both sides of our table are saying that we want the same thing. We're saying that we want robust salaries that honor all of the elements of the work that teachers do and that incentivize teachers to stay in the ICSD. However, it seems that we have, so far, it seems that we have some different philosophies on how to approach this and different perceptions of what would actually be incentivizing to our teachers. So our original ITA proposal, in our big proposal book, we took two paths. We wanted to leave the door open for our salary discussion to go either way, knowing that it could go either way. And as a foodie and an English teacher, thinking in metaphors really helps me. We have two possible ways to approach salary. We have a price fix menu and we have an a la carte menu. Our proposal for a step and lane system to really dig in and commit together to competitive, attractive, predictable, incentivizing salaries through making a true investment in that step and lane system is the price fix, right? You pay a bunch, but you get everything. On the other hand, we have proposals 4 through 22 that give you the a la carte menu, right? If we are not making that investment in the salaries overall and looking at something different, then we're getting into all of those little pieces. We're getting into those extra things. We're getting into when we can't find a substitute teacher and we lose a prep period, what's the appropriate compensation for that one day, for that one time, every single time. None of us like the system of constant timesheets. None of us like feeling like we are nickel and diming our employers. But under the current system, the salary is not doing enough to make us feel like we don't have to do that every time. We feel like we are ordering on the a la carte menu every single day that we come to work. And we are really hoping for a commitment tonight at this table to fix that. It is really up to you moving forward in the conversation to decide which menu you're ordering from. And that, I think, before we even get into all the other pieces of like our members' reactions to the counter proposals, it would be nice to know which menu we're ordering from.
Thank you. And thank you for that history. I appreciated that. Thank you for the acknowledgement of all of us wishing to do and be in the same place. And when we were here last Thursday around this time, we finished with and you led with, you were going to come back and tell us how this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So while the a la carte versus the price fix menu is a conversation we can have, it's kind of premature to have that until we hear what you were proposing at the end of our last session. You mentioned you have a system that will work. And you even quoted me last time saying, when you get something you like, you say thank you. Mm-hmm. And you promised to come back to us about how this could all work. So I don't want to preempt anything you're planning to do with taking us down one path or the other. I have some strong feelings about that too. But yeah, I'm eager to hear, Brian, Catherine, how does it, I mean, you mentioned the 19.68 number is somewhat fixed from my perspective. I shared that. And you said it didn't matter about the numbers. You can make any number work in your system. So if the system, which is what I heard the last time, was what was most important, let's talk about how we make that system work with the dollar amounts or any dollar amount, as you said the last time, embedded.
Okay. I just want to be clear, the number does matter. and the system works with any set of numbers. So the percentage does matter, right? It's not that it
I
doesn't.
agree. I was the one who leveled the percentage, but I'm just re-quoting. We've been good at restating what people have said here, and that's what was said the last time.
Okay. Is it worth talking about our members' reactions to the counter proposals that you offered?
I want to hear from people at all times, but I also want to get to the meat of this conversation. What does it look like, y'all? I know what I'm anticipating. Some of that is going to be, we want to be compensated well. We want more money. We want to be valued. That's what we all want. So if it's something different, let me know. But otherwise, let's get to the dollars, man. How's it going to work?
I think it gets into some of the needs before we
Alright.
get into some of the money. So like,
Okay.
I'm the word person, so I'm just gonna
Hey,
keep
I
going with
got you.
words.
I've been patient.
Okay, so as we talked with our members about what we need, as we looked at the counter proposals that we received, 4% a year, just straight without a change in a salary system, and honestly, 4% a year probably with a salary system, is not enough to undo 15 years of sluggish salaries for those who've committed to staying here. And it's not enough to undo the last 6 years of exorbitant cost of living changes. Our cost of living in this town has risen by, 34% in the past 3 years?
4.5%.
34.5% in the past 3 years. And we've been in a 6-year contract. So that's huge to our members. 4% is not problem-solving money. It's just maintaining the status quo money. Our members are committed to not accepting a salary proposal that doesn't fix those systemic inequities in our salaries. If we cannot address the leapfrogging and we cannot address the compression for mid-career hires, then we cannot accept a deal. So far, we've seen the ITA, our plan of a step and lane as the only plan to address these issues. The plan that was presented as the counter proposal does not address those issues. We also, our members feel strongly that we need to bring COLA back into the conversation, but to view it as a worst case scenario plan in case future negotiations go sideways. The thing that's important to remember with a step and lane, as opposed to what we have now, is that if a future negotiation, well, right now, if we don't, and this is more for the people at home than for you, because you all know this, but right now, if we don't get to an agreement by June 30th, really, if we don't get to an agreement by the first paycheck of the year, our teachers are not getting a raise. They are having the same salary that they had on the last day of school. They're going to be taking home less because health insurance is going to go up, and we know that. So our teachers essentially will be coming back in making less than they made the day that they left. A step and lane means that that is never the case again in the future, because you move up a step every year. So you are guaranteed to never be stuck in September, coming back, making less than you made the year before, or even making the same. What the COLA does is really just a stopgap that keeps the entire system competitive, right? It means that the entire grid can shift if we need it to. And the way that we've written the COLA on that is only if you reach that impasse point. Only if you reach that, we couldn't come up with anything, but the COLA automatically takes care of the salaries. So for our members, bringing that back in is important, but making sure that people understand that it really is only a worst case scenario, and that it's really there. It can be used as a way to mutually hold everybody to getting a deal done, right? Like, it gives that incentive to get that deal done so that you don't have to use it. We also had, as we looked at the longevity bonuses, our members were very clear that those longevity bonuses, without the retroactivity, does not fix the problem of leapfrogging. It does not get us equitable. It does not fix the third-year teacher who makes more than the year teacher. And in fact, by having some people who have to wait 5 years for that to kick in, they've been leapfrogged and people have continued to make more than them over that time because they're getting higher percentage on their base, which was already higher. It actually makes the problem worse and is not something that we can support. There's also the piece that in the proposal we got, we were looking at a 4-year, you gave us a 4-year proposal with a 5-year plan. And a 5-year plan, the 5th year is not guaranteed on a 4-year proposal. So our members were like, well, if I'm the 5th year person, how can I even guarantee that that's even going to stick around? So that was really just not something that we were interested in because it really doesn't address the structural systemic problems that we absolutely need to solve at this table. The concerns with the high needs certification bonus, we heard a lot of them at the table the other day, but that there's no guarantee that the high needs areas will be locked in. So people could spend their time getting the certification for that high needs area only to find that that's no longer a high needs area and the bonus isn't there. Our members do not have the money up front to take this gamble. The fact that it would be out of their own pockets, which are already so slim, nobody can take that. And additionally, our members don't have the time, energy, and bandwidth to maintain their work demands here while also securing extra certifications and maintaining any semblance of a work-life balance. The tenure achievement bonuses were really so little that even if they were a base salary increase, no one was confident that they would solve problems. So those are the pieces that our members talked about in the hours of conversation that we had with them. For us, it really is the step in lane. Our members have charged us to stay the course on that, and that is really where we need to go.
Okay.
We have yet to see a better option to address our
Cool.
problems.
Thank you. And we spent a lot of time talking about a proposal from us and all the things that you don't like about it. And if I'm hearing, and just confirm or deny, if there's a rejection of our counter proposal, which from my perspective, we left a session and a half ago, just say we reject your counter proposal. I and we are very excited to hear about what you were proposing, which is what we left with 19.68 over 4 years in a step and lane system. You were going to propose to us what that would look like. And I'm excited for it. I don't need to relitigate a proposal that you already said you're rejecting. Well, you didn't say you rejected yet. I keep hearing how you don't like it. But from my perspective, the most aggressive proposal that we've ever put on the table, that's more than 4%. Let's be clear. Over 4 years in the midst of a pending economic crisis with other organizations around us looking to lay off and do pay freezes in a community that's bound by a tax cap, that's using about $15 million as we put together our budget right now in fund balance. A proposal that I felt was aggressive, you're saying no and you're rejecting. At this moment, knowing how things are changing, I'm cool. I don't like it, but I get it. But I am excited to hear how you're gonna make this other one work with a step. I'm saying publicly, I'm open to a conversation about step and lane. That we all saying the same thing. And that number's still tight. So tell me how it's gonna work. We've been waiting for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I just want to speak to that Catherine, I think the reason that you're going into such detail about the proposal, one of the reasons is we said last week, we were interested in step and lane. I know Dominic and Zach, we continued to have a talk this week about step and lane and this proposal. So I know there was an idea of which will our members still go with. So the proposal seemed very much in the air. And it seemed what we wanted to do with this was say, here are the concrete reasons why it's not going to work for our members. I know we brought step and lane to the table. This might not be the 3rd week. We haven't heard a concrete no about it. So we know like it's still on the table, but we wanted to, when we're, I guess, saying no to something, we want to give solid, concrete reasons why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to say yes to something, but I got to see it first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Catherine's getting there.
So one of the things that in these conversations we talked about was that our members do have a bit of a concern with locking in a salary percentage today when we haven't begun to negotiate the length of the workday or benefits, knowing that those are two huge topics that could drastically change working conditions, in which case there would have to be
You
salary.
had to buy it.
adjustments made.
You had to add to the 19.68 if we did something else. I get that.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that we are considering the salary issue only in light of our current benefits and working
I'm
conditions.
sorry, can you say your response one more time, Dr. Brown?
Yeah, we're trying to get to a salary number first. And we've already said all those other things we'll talk about later. And if that is a negotiation and there's a cost associated, we could withdraw a proposal. We got to get past this number first, y'all.
Okay.
I'm not being agitated, but I am pushing us. We're 21 minutes in and I haven't seen this proposal we've been waiting 2 weeks on, that's all. Do y'all have it?
We want to know, do you want the ceiling or do you want the floor? Knowing that there are other big pieces that will need to be negotiated, do you want to set the ceiling or do you want us to set the floor?
I want to
Meaning-
see a step and lane system at 4 years at 19.68, and that's what you promised we would see tonight. I don't want to define it ceiling or floor. I just want what you said you would bring, that's all.
You have it.
So I'm just gonna pull it up and you can
Mhm.
go ahead if you want.
No, you need to explain it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I think it's something we're talking about. You want to say that before I bring it up? I mean,
So we want to make sure that everybody understands that the step and lane at 4% is not our proposal. Like that is, we ran the numbers because that was what you asked for. We ran the numbers. The numbers are not, they're not working. They're not working to solve the problems. They're not working to give our members what they need. Brian can explain the numbers, but they're not working.
Let me clarify with that. You said that it didn't matter the number, and the 19.68, you were going to back into your system and make it work and show us. So if that's just not true, I'm
no,
struggling
no.
to figure out what we're saying.
yeah, we're ready to go with it. I think what Catherine's saying is.
They do not meet the needs
Right.
of our members.
This is what negotiation is. I wanted that number to be 40%. I've told you the constraints, I told you where
Right.
we are, and that's where we've been negotiating. And you said you would show us what it looks like at 19.68.
Yep.
I want to say I'm about to show it. I want to be clear, this is not our proposal.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear. This is a request that you have for us.
And this is partly us understanding what a step and lane system looks like. Because as someone who would be going into this for the first time in a long time in the school district, I want to make sure it meets the needs of our newer educators and our more veteran and mid-career educators. That's an important thing for us to think about. And if you have a system that shows that everyone's going to be treated as you use equitably, then I want to see that.
Sure. Just do Control K. Join the Zoom. I'm all right.
Hi, this is the voice from above. I don't know if any of you can hear me.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
If Brian doesn't join Zoom, it's not going to show up on the iPads or for the people watching at home.
I'm about to join Zoom.
Okay, he's gonna join Zoom.
Thank you, God.
Emily's everywhere, but
Yes.
nowhere. I love it.
Okay, right.
And can you clarify, and Don and Zach, you've seen this already, right? Isn't this when you and Carrie and Brian met? You've seen this?
Briefly.
Okay.
We're there, okay. So these are pretty fun to look at, right? A lot of numbers.
Brian, I think you need to share your screen on the Zoom also.
You have to accept your promotion to panelist in order to share your screen.
Yeah, the Zoom. Yep, thanks. In the Zoom, yes, got it. I'm gonna close this other data because that's my kids' stuff. I'm getting promoted. There we go. And I'm gonna share my screen.
Promotion for Brian.
Participant screen sharing has been disabled.
Should work now. Sorry
There we
about
go.
that.
Yep, thank you. Here we go. So is that good for Zoom? Oh, yeah, great. Great, okay. So we prepared 4 years of salary grids, and it's a lot of numbers up there, but this takes all the way up through 25. This would be the 25-26 school year. Just gonna orient you to this. And we go through the 26-27, the 27-28, and way at the end, the 28-29. So these are the salary grids that many members would step onto. Some of our members would not. Part of doing this kind of plan is just not one way to do it. So we've run models in this grid. This would leave some of our less experienced members receiving very small raises. They would receive as little as a 2% raise, the way that we structured it. It would leave other members receiving raises in the idea of catching them up to prevent the leapfrogging to fix this grid. We could certainly reconfigure these numbers so that if our membership said we cannot handle some members having a 2%, then we would say, then the lowest will go as 3%, which would mean that we wouldn't grow this grid as much. These numbers wouldn't be as strong, and more members would stay off the grid. That's doable. Or if we felt the grid wasn't powerful enough, in theory, we could say some members get 1% and the grid grows stronger because those are the salaries we're looking more forward to attaining. So there are many ways to implement this. This is one of many ways. This is a model where the first thing that I just said is true. We have some members getting 2%, our veteran members, some of them getting 3.5%, and other members making more than that because of the catch-up mechanic within that grid. So that's the idea.
So can I ask some questions all along, or do you want me to wait till the end?
Let's start with Dr. Brown.
Yeah, because one of the things I remember you saying to us was that our approach to this was not equitable. And you were hoping to use our approaches to compensation to solve the crisis in retention. And I think we have a slide. Don't we have a slide that shows over the last 3 years who have left the organization? In the Ithaca City School District, I know for at least 15 years, and probably longer than that, we've had about 50 to 70 people leave each year. And that's a combination of retirements, transitions, you name it, but about 50 to 70 every year. And we pulled some data on what's happened over the last 3 years. And it's around, if I'm not mistaken, around 170 or so. And then we went a little bit deeper to who is leaving, because what I think I was hearing from the testimonials and from you all is that we're losing a lot of folks in the mid-career. So when thinking about the step and lane system, I was understanding how we may want to do something more for the folks in the middle if that is the place we're trying to retain. But I also was remembering you saying to me that you wanted an approach that was equitable. That's why we proposed something that was 4% for everybody. So with that being said, if we can show the data, is it up there or is it on our screen?
We'd have to switch. And
Okay, y'all just switch real quick because I want to make sure people hear this point and why we were thinking when we had a perspective on how to retain and what that would look like And so when we were putting together those incentives for folks who were in mid and late career to get a significant amount of money added to their base, while at the same time keeping the salaries and the increases for folks at the early career stage comparable, if not equitable. This is what we were thinking. So, but, and I'm saying that because when I see what you have here, if some people are getting 1 or 2%, I don't see that as equitable. And I don't see it addressing what I see as the real issue. I don't think we have a retention crisis. I think our retention and our attrition is somewhat comparable from year to year and has been somewhat stable. And we have data to show that. And again, over the last 3 years, there's 175 folks. And then when we look at who these people are by percentage and by raw number, you will see the distribution. 88 folks are in their first couple of years. When we think about that mid-career, we look at year 10 to 15, you'll see the raw number of people. So I think that's where we have a bit of a disconnect. And I've been watching, what was it? We watched a math documentary. We watched a lot of documentaries, and I've learned some new terminology as language is important around data science, and to be persistent and consistent with data science approaches, you got to have comparable data, a common understanding about what it is we're looking at, in agreement about these are the numbers, and then an understanding about how to interpret these numbers. And I think we have some disconnects here. Because where I see the attrition, even though I don't see it as significantly outpacing what we've had in the past, where there is attrition, it's not in the mid-career, it's more in the early careers. And you're on a step system in the ways in which has been proposed to us by what I'm seeing here wouldn't address that retention issue.
So I want to respond to one of those things, talking about the equity. Yes, sure, that is a word we can use in a lot of different ways.
It has been, yeah.
Right? So the intent, the idea behind the step and lane is to say that we are fixing a couple of very tangible problems. So problems that we can't disagree on, problems like leapfrogging, as Catherine said, problems like salary compression, problems like, why am I making, with the same years of service and the same educational experience, something different than my friends at the table? So those are, we have the graphs and we've shown the graphs. This would work toward fixing it. So certainly when we hear people making different salaries and we use numbers like 1 and 2% in a proposal that we are not proposing, those sound like inequitable things compared to other teachers making more. The idea behind the step lane, which the ICSD proposal does not do, is fix the compression, fix the leapfrogging, fix the difference of salaries despite similar experiences. And it works to fix that because if you throw 4% at everyone and you give everyone longevity bonuses, then the same problems just keep going year after year. We're all getting 4%, we're all getting the same longevity bonuses. And I agree, like the 4.59% that you offered, because you were at 4 in your initial proposal, came up to 4.59. That's certainly more attractive than 4, no question. We'd rather have 4.59 than 4. But the process that you suggested, as Catherine said, and I'll reiterate, sure, everyone's getting the same, but the central problem is not fixed.
Have you addressed the question that I had at the last session? And what are you proposing? Like, we would have to make this work. I mean, in the HR department, we would have to have a new teacher come in or a mid-career person come into our organization. We would have to put them someplace on this grid. How do we do that? What are you proposing? I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars here. So what are you proposing? Like, how do you want to distribute it? The number, the 19.68 is solid. How is this going to work? I still don't have a good sense of that. Do you want more time? Do you want to redistribute the money?
I just want to be clear, we have a lot of material ready. I'm not sure I understand your question. Is your question like what is our salary pot that we're asking for? Is it, how do we want, what's our?
All right, well, maybe you were
distributing?
sure, maybe you had answered it, and I'll be clear. We asked for a 19.68 distributed across a step model. What would you be proposing? Because when you proposed this one earlier, you said, well, we can do this in many other different ways. But tonight, when I go back to our team and our board, what am I saying the ITA is proposing since they rejected our proposal?
Give me just a second, if you don't mind. So,
Are we stepping away?
want to
Caucus?
step away.
Yeah, like, yes, it's five.
We're calling 5?
Yeah, we're calling five.
You'll note that the clock is now an hour.
So we are waiting for some copies. So, but while we're waiting for some copies, I do have one major thing to address before we look at our counter proposal. As we were talking, as you were talking about equity and the definition of equity. And I think we need to make sure that we remember that equity and equality are actually two different words with two different meanings. And as we're talking about this, that's actually kind of part of what we're talking about. Equity is doing what is fair and gives people what they need, whereas equality is giving people the same thing. So to give the 4% to everybody, to say that if these people get this and these people get this, that's not equitable. It's just actually not equality. Equity is giving people what they need to get to the places that they need to. So I just want to make
Thank
sure
you
that we're
for that
clear about that.
definition, which I'm well aware, and I've used that same one. But we also at the same time got to define what are the needs? Because when looking at a salary grid, one could assume that the lowest paid folks need more money.
Well,
So just define, I'm just saying what I would assume, but tell me, what do you mean by greatest need?
So what,
got it,
I got it. So what our members have expressed to us numerous times that they need is to fix the salary compression at our mid-career point. We need to fix the leapfrogging. And we need to fix the not having a clear understanding of what you are paid, why you are paid it, and what you can expect to earn over the course of your career.
So with that definition, the need would be for the folks who are being leapfrogged and they are needing more money to make sure they aren't leapfrogged. Like I know I'm digging deep, but this is an important
so-
point about who is not getting what they need.
Yep. So we are about to give you the counter proposal because we just had to wait for all of our copies to be made. And what this does is it ensures that Brian explains this so much better than me, but because it's not my thing to explain, I think it's actually useful for me to explain it. What this ensures is that your salary is on a step that aligns with your years of experience,
Got it.
not necessarily your
Thank
years
you.
of service to the ICSD, but your years of experience as a teacher in the field. And that you are put on a lane in accordance with your professional development experience.
Got it.
So that you can say, I'm year 18. I have 30, so I go across 18. I have 36 credits. I go down to 36 credits. That is my salary. I look at my paycheck. I say, that is my salary. Everything is good. Next year, you flip the page, look at the next one. I will be at 19 and 36. That will be my salary.
That's the predictability.
That is the
What I'm asking about
predictability.
the equity. What need is needing to be met that isn't being met? And then while we're at it, the leapfrogging, because what you just described is around experience. So in a lane system, from my understanding, if I took on more graduate credits or I did more in service, I could technically leapfrog someone who's doing nothing.
Oh, yeah. Someone who has fewer years of experience, but more professional service is going to be in a different place. That's what these grids are going to show you.
Yeah, so again, and are we saying that's bad or good? Because when
Well,
looking at the
we're-
raw numbers, much of the places where we found people being, if we're going to use the term leapfrog, it's because of what they've done.
So the leapfrog, what the leapfrog is I know their names and I'm not going to use them. Member A currently is in year 3. They have 36 credits. Person B is in year 7. They have 36 credits. Currently, person A in year 3 has a higher salary than person
Because of what we
B.
did 6 years ago.
Because of what we did 6 years ago, because of what we did
Right.
10 years ago,
Right.
12 years ago,
Right.
15 years ago, because of many decisions over time.
Right.
This is the plan to say a lot of stuff has compounded over time. Let's try and actually set it
That's
right.
right.
Let's try and tidy it up over 4 years. Can you pass down the page that has the like text that's not just
Can
the
I-
grid?
Maybe
There
just
we
in
go.
terms of language, though, when you say set it right, by definition, both sides have collaboratively built this system. So there's nothing wrong to set right. It's what we have negotiated for the last 30 years. It may result in differences, but everyone has sat at the table with equal bargaining power. It's gone back to membership. It's gone back to boards of education. Everyone's agreed over the last 20 years that this is a system we will work under.
Right.
It's not incumbent, I don't think, upon any of us to quantify that as having been something, a wrong that needs to be righted. And even if we wanted to right it, it doesn't mean that it has to be done in 3 to 4 to 5 years, something
Well-
that's taken decades to get to.
Undeniably, everyone who has made decisions at these tables before us, and including us, has contributed. And I am having conversations with members asking, what are the chances if I quit today that I could be hired back to the same position tomorrow so that I can make $10,000 more? And I tell them, there's no guarantee you're going to get hired back.
What-
And we're going to fix it at the table.
Do we have any raw numbers? How many people are we talking that are in that type of situation? Is it 10? Is it 110? Is it 300?
I want to back up a little and I want to answer your question for sure. I do want to say, I agree. And if it, again, I'm reminded of a couple weeks ago, if it sounded like we were finger pointing at the ICSD for negotiating these terrible contracts that now we find ourselves in this situation, I'll apologize. I'll say that was not the intent.
No apology.
The intent was,
No.
the intent was to talk about a structural problem that we didn't know we had until we were in this moment and we realized we have this structural problem. And I say we collectively and for all the negotiators before me. So I want to be clear about that. In terms of numbers, you're asking numbers of people that are,
Who have been leapfrogged.
yeah, I mean, while you continue to talk, I can look for some of those numbers.
I mean, even if you have rough numbers, like, is it a dozen? Is it 110? Is it 310? Do we have any sense of how many folks we're talking about that have been leapfrogged? And
I'm not sure that that's like completely significant to the conversation. And I think that we would be doing a disservice to the people who got leapfrogged, figured it out and left. And Brian can pull up those numbers.
I can, because essentially it's each person who is moving onto the grid versus the 4%, because they're getting gridded because they're catching up in a way. So
But have they actually been leapfrogged or they're just behind on the grid?
You're behind on the grid. So, right, it's true. Leapfrog could be one of a couple reasons why you're behind, but compared to somebody, you're getting leapfrogged. So maybe not the person that shares your experience, but maybe your years of experience, but maybe the person that got graduate credits sooner or got graduate credits later. In some way, that's a form of leapfrog.
But that's going to continue even on your proposal. If we're in the same year, but I'm moving across faster than you for whatever reason, I'm getting more and more credits each year than you are. I'm going to have a higher salary than you.
We support that. We support people getting credits and having a higher salary, right? But what we don't support is in that moment of if we're at the same level, we should be at the same level. If you then advance with more certification grad increments, then of course you should get a higher
Okay,
salary.
cool. So you have a system that's going to fix that. And you're saying that it's okay if some people are getting significant. You mentioned a low end at one point around 2%, but you didn't mention a higher end. So like, what kind of a range and percentage
I
shifts are we?
mentioned, yeah, I just want to be clear. I mentioned 2% on a proposal that's not on the table. It's not our proposal. It was a model we created.
I know you said it 4 times. I get that. But you did promise you would bring back a model
Yeah.
that worked
We're
with
ready to go.
19.68.
Yeah, we got a lot done in those 20 minutes, and we have our proposal in front of you. We have models. So Catherine, do you want to read down, or should I start with doing a projection on the screen?
Why don't I read?
Okay.
So we're looking to adjust Article 25A2. So this is down in the proposed language on the text. The base, so 25A21, step and lane salary system. The base salaries of all new teachers will be established in accordance with the mutually agreed upon step lane salary schedules outlined in Appendix E1. So that's going to be your first table. A teacher's,
Maybe it would be appropriate for me now to project that.
let me go through it all. A teacher's step is determined by their years of service. A teacher's lane is determined by their district-approved graduate and in-service credits. All teachers' steps reflect the year they will start on July 1st. When a teacher reaches their 25th year of service, they will remain on step 25 plus for the duration of their employment. That is just the new hires that we would hire for next year. 25A2 addresses our returning people. To transition to a step lane system, and this has to say 4 years because we wrote it quick, and we wrote this as a 4. To transition to a step lane system, the parties will implement the 4-year step lane schedules, Appendix E1 through E3, to adjust the salaries of all returning teachers to align with the schedule by June of 2029.
That's right.
The parties will work collaboratively to develop a spreadsheet that includes all returning teachers' 24-25 base salary, their years of experience and district-approved credits, and their anticipated 25-26 salary based on the step lane schedule. Any year 1 through 20 teacher whose anticipated 25-26 salary is lower than their current salary, plus 3.7%, will instead receive a 3.7% increase to their current salary. Those
3.75.
are our off-grid people. If the first year of the grid will not catch them up to where they need to be, they will be guaranteed 3.75. This will continue until the teacher's salary aligns with the step lane schedule. Any year 21 through 25 teacher or 25 plus teacher whose anticipated 25-26 salary is lower than their current salary plus 4% will instead receive a 4% increase on their current salary. This will continue until the teacher's salary aligns with the step lane schedule, keeping in mind that everybody should align, and there may be an outlier here or there, but that everyone should align by 2029 on this plan. Starting July 1st, 2025, all teachers on step 25 plus the prior year will receive the newly adjusted step 25 plus an additional 4% career increment increase to their base salary. This will continue for every additional year they are employed. Teachers who begin the 25-26 school year with 26 or more years of service will enter the salary on step 25 plus at the corresponding rate. If this rate is lower than their current salary plus 4%, they will instead be given a 4% salary increase. During this transition,
No teacher will receive less than a 3.7% salary increase per year, and no teacher will see a reduction in salary. Each teacher's designated step and lane will be clearly accessible for review in the district's payroll management software. That is the entire text, and I'm going to let Brian display the spreadsheets.
I will, and I just, it's tricky in this kind of proposal because we're proposing an average increase to the amount of money. I would call this the 7.5% each of 4 years proposal, right? So we came to you with an 8% average each of 3 years. This is because in good faith, we recognize that the 8% may not have been working for y'all, so we want to do 7.5. It doesn't say that anywhere in here because it's implicit in the grid and what we've had set up, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
You see,
For
no,
me,
it doesn't?
the 4-year proposal, step in lane system that you said you would bring to us at 19.68. Do you have that or not? And are you giving us something different? I'm hearing 7.5 over 4 years. So where's the one you said you would bring? You just don't bring, you're not bringing that to us? And that would be my first question about where's the one that you said you would bring? And then secondly, with this, this is a lot of language we're seeing for the first time. I recognize and realize that no one's going to receive less than 3.75. What's the total dollar? I mean, what will be on the high end? Because some folks are going to be getting much more than that. And have you quantified what will be the total? So you quantified the entire package at 7.5% for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I just want to address the first thing you said, leading to caucus. I believe you had asked, what is your proposal?
No, I asked, what is the 19.68 one that you said you had?
So this is our proposal. That's why we caucused. I certainly have a grid, which I was showing for a while, of 19.68. We don't have a proposal for 19.68 because that's not a proposal we're interested in. But we do have a proposal we are interested in. And I can show you in that proposal some of the highs, lows, the pots of salary or whatever.
And also, the only piece of the language on this piece of paper that changed is the numbers. This is the same language that was given to you at our exchange of proposals. So it is not the first time, it's the first time we've spent a long time digging into the language. It's not the first time you've seen the language.
Folks, I think fundamentally, though, we have 19.68. We are interested in a grid and lane system that works at 19.68. We have no authority to go over that.
Go ahead, Dan.
That's the bottom line. Can you do a grid and lane system that meets 19.68?
Okay, so we hear you and we've heard that number since we've started this process. And I think maybe it's time to just pull it out. We reject that proposal and here's our counter proposal.
And your number is, what's your total amount?
30% over 4 years.
30% over 4 years.
So it's, do you want percentage or dollar?
Both.
So we're saying 33.5% over 4 years, 33.5, right? And then the total dollar. And this is the dollar based on figures you had given us of salaries is 13, an increase of 13, my math's not right, 12.7 million. That's an
Which,
increase.
and again, it's important for us to all have the same data and numbers. That $13 million far exceeds our tax cap ability to raise via the tax cap and other things. We went through how the youth fund balances and also 13 is a lot of money for 4 years.
So we've heard this. And we've heard you ask, what are the ideas if it's not going over the tax cap? We absolutely believe, based on the financial information that you gave in the ST3s, that this money does exist and that it is a matter of making some choices about how to get to it. Now,
Can you be more
We-
specific?
Yeah, I'm
Because
about
We've heard that too.
that money
I know, I'm
exists,
about to.
but I mean, just for folks to understand, that money is not reoccurring money. That exists in various reserves and fund balance.
So,
So you're asking us to pay a continuing cost out of savings. That doesn't work for long term.
so we are not, we wanted to be absolutely clear that we believe that this can be done without going over the tax cap. We know that right now, the budget that you have is not yet your final line by line, which means that there is still room to make adjustment in it. We know that right now there's the commitment to keeping the budget at the tax cap, but that line by line, there is still room. You do not yet have every single thing, at least on when you
Agreed.
met
Yeah, we
with our
have to make
team.
up a $900,000 gap. We're working on that
Right.
this week.
We've also heard skepticism about foundation aid being something that we can count on. The foundation aid formula has changed, and our foundation aid with the Save Harmless clause means that what we have now is our foundation aid floor. We should not be budgeting for our potential foundation aid falling off next year. If we want to be conservative, we can budget for our foundation aid to stay flat because the foundation aid has established a floor. There's also a lot of talk in Albany about changing that foundation aid formula. It changes all the time and it stays flat. The floor is what you have. So the foundation aid, we don't have to worry about. We can continue to count on that
At
foundation
flat.
aid.
Now, let me be clear. If it's flat, that means it's no additional revenue. With
Right, but you were,
8%,
but you've repeatedly said that we can't count on it not to drop.
we can't, and nor can we count on it to go up.
Right, but
And
we can
these-
count on it to not drop.
I agree. And
Until the law is changed.
but hold on, it's an important point here for everybody to understand. We're talking about not a one-time 7.5% increase, but 3 more years.
That's
So
true.
that's additional revenue we would have to find that would hopefully come
Mhm.
from some increase to the tax cap or foundation.
Nope.
All right, I just want to make, so
You
being flat
have
is a
over
conservative estimate.
years
Yeah.
been over budgeting your expenditures and bringing in more revenue than you expect to. So there's already a difference. A budget is a plan, not a prescription. A budget is not exact. You have planned on what you'll take in and you take in more. You have planned on what you'll spend and you spend less. That is great budgeting. That is like the way that people want to do it. That's ideal. But then you're putting it in unrestricted fund balance. You're putting it away for a rainy day. You're putting it away for an emergency. I am hearing what sounds like a fundamental disagreement on whether or not paying our teachers what they need to stay here is an emergency. And that's a values situation. That's a philosophical conversation. But you have a fund balance that once you finalize the line by line budget, you will find more money there. Once you look at revenues and expenditures that you've budgeted for, you will find more money there. If you do not find enough money there, we have a fund balance. And over a month, 2 months ago, our Board of Education charged engaging in a conversation with Cornell about upping their voluntary contributions to our school as well. We recognize that 6 months ago, that would have been a much easier conversation to have with them. That federal situation has changed things in the past 6 months, but we also know that Cornell could go to the table tomorrow and you could start having that conversation. Our members have asked, whatever happened to that conversation? I'd love to hear an update on that. All I'm saying is we believe, based on our analysis of the budget documents that you gave to us and the budget documents that you have submitted to New York State, that this is possible without going over the tax cap.
Thank you. Question and then maybe a request. Again, I do wish to know if the floor is 3.75 or 4%, what will be the high? As we think about, based on the grid that you're proposing at the 30% over 4 years, some people will be receiving how much of an increase versus the 4%?
The thing that makes me uncomfortable with that request is you're asking for us to, I mean, we're not going to name their name, but you're asking for us to take the one person who has over years had their salary compressed so much over time to say, hey, they're going to get this significant increase because their salary has gone over time, and then turn that into the teachers want to give someone this exorbitant amount of increase. That's an uncomfortable place. And we know who those people are. Those are our people. And I'm not comfortable with that
Are you
question.
Thank
talking
you.
about the people that have been leapfrogged?
We're talking about people who've been leapfrogged. We're talking about people who've had their salaries compressed. We're talking about people who,
I don't understand when you say compressed. How is a teacher's salary compressed?
Yeah, so when Catherine's using the word compression, she's talking about how under former contracts that we both negotiated, that for a number of years, folks were getting a smaller raise, right? And then
Who
so,
was getting a smaller raise? You got 4, 3, 3, 4.
right,
Everyone got the same percentage raise.
I appreciate that. I'm talking about earlier on, let's say in the early 2000s, folks were getting a 2% raise. right?
Everyone was getting 2, correct?
Excuse me. After that, as raises increased, our newer members benefited from those strong raises.
As you negotiated. Yes. Why is that a problem now? You negotiated. Those teachers voted on it. Everyone knew what they were going to earn.
That's a really interesting idea I want to address directly.
Yeah.
Do you think nobody ever makes a mistake?
You're saying multiple years.
I want to go even further because I can't stomach this idea of past agreements. I'm somebody that's been here for 15 years and I've been involved in the union a good part of the time. So I've been
And on
part
the
of
negotiation teams.
been
Yeah.
part of these agreements. I was hired in 2010. So for my first 2 contracts, I don't think we saw an increase in salary over 2% per year.
Right. And
And you want to call that an agreement?
you didn't see it. You negotiated it.
Let me clarify that agreement in different terms. I'll give you my perspective on it. The interesting thing about being a teacher is that you can't go on strike, right? So when you negotiate a contract, you are left with whatever the district offers you and nothing, right? Nothing is your default, especially if you don't have a step and lane system to give you even a basic cost of living increase at the end. So here you are negotiating in 2010 or 2011 or 2012, and the district offers you, let's say they offer you 2%. You're lucky if that happens. It's more likely 1.5. It's not even a cost of living increase. Inflation is more than that. But the district holds the cards. You have nothing. You have if I could finish speaking, I'd appreciate it.
It's just not true, though.
I'm sure you can say that when I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Chris, just keep going.
Sorry, it's difficult for me to talk when somebody talks.
Just keep going. Take a
Where
breath.
was I? Oh, 1.5%. Imagine you're offered by the district 1.5%. You have hundreds of members who are trying to meet their housing needs and their childcare needs. And now they're back into this desperate corner. Should I accept 1.5% or nothing? And maybe the group grasps at that. Agreement isn't the word I would use for that. I would add another caveat. The district doesn't offer us 1.5 to 2%. We bought it because it's a negotiation. So now we have to give something up to get that. We weren't freely offered 2% or 1.5%. No, we gave stuff up. What did we give up the first year? Sabbaticals forever is how we bought an additional 0.5% and went from 1.5 to 2. A few years down the road, we gave up Wednesday meetings forever. We now meet every Wednesday for an additional period of time. We bought that. Barely cost of living increase. And in the process, we have people like me earning very little increase over time. We have a very adversarial relationship with district, both of which we're trying to move past. And I would like to move past that. I actually believe that we have a unique opportunity to move past that this year. So after those, whatever, one contract, then the next contract, the third contract, the union finally stood up for itself. We did the only thing we could do. We can't strike. We could declare impasse. We went a year without pay increases. And we made our case to the community. We stood outside of Wegmans. We brought in a state negotiator. We settled an agreement retroactively and immediately started working on the next one. And that changed the tenor of our negotiation. it set the floor for our current contract ending now, which is a 6-year deal, in which the district came with what I thought was a meaningful salary increase that I saw in good faith. They didn't ask us to give a lot up. We didn't have to increase our health insurance payment. We talked about 4.5, 4.
We got dental and vision.
4.5, 4. It felt like we were moving to a good place. And I think that was done in good faith. We then got hit by a pandemic. Nobody sees that coming, right? It's been 100 years since that happened. As a result, we faced the highest inflation rates we've seen in 50 years. So through nobody's fault at all, that 6-year deal, which was supposed to catch up our earning power, instead is neutral from a cost of living perspective, totally neutral. So now somebody like me had 2 to 3 contracts, nothing more than the cost of living increase or less. Then unfortunately, cost of living increase over the last several years, and now we're here. And the district offers us a 4% per year raise and says that it's a meaningful amount. And I believe that. I believe that the district convinced members of its team or members of the Board of Education that 4% is a meaningful amount. I can understand that. But I hope you folks can understand that in our current environment, 4% is again, cost of living increase. Inflation is currently 3%. It'll likely be higher than that by the end of the year. When you say 4%, to me, cost of living, there's not a raise there. At the most, there's a 1% raise. When we put up our step and lane system, I'm grateful for you considering the step and lane system, and it doesn't work at 4%. You say, hey, what about the earnings for our new teachers being low? 4% isn't enough. That's what we demonstrated tonight. And so what we want to say as clearly as possible is that step and lane is priority number 1 for us. And it sounds like you folks are open to that. And we appreciate that, truly.
Thanks, Chris.
We'd love to start with the step and lane. And I want to say this, we also need more than 4%. And if you think that we're desperate enough to take 4% versus nothing, you might be right. 50-year high inflation rate, our members are desperate. If we don't agree to what you want here at this table, they get nothing. We might be that desperate, but I hope not. And I believe not. I believe we are more resolved than that. I believe we are more organized than that. And I believe this community supports us over that. We cannot afford cost of living increases for the next 4 years. There is no way that works in our classrooms.
Appreciate you. And I'm proud to say I've been at the table for those times when you said people were negotiating in good faith. Some of those years I was not at the table for, so it's hard for me to speak to. And we're at a place, and I'll be the first I was expecting something tonight that we didn't get. We were told you could make this work at the number I gave. And you just said it can't. So
we would say we would show you what it looked like at the number.
I haven't seen that in a way that will work.
We can put it on the screen again.
Okay,
Yeah.
in a way that you said that would be equitable, because I see people getting a 1%, 2% raises, and some people getting much more. And I asked that question for a reason around the range, because that's a question that I will be asked no matter what we approve
So we keep
in a very
getting,
transparent way.
we keep getting caught up in equitable for whom. We are looking at an equitable system for our entire unit.
Got it. I hadn't
And
heard
it
that.
sounds like you are asking for an equality system that is
No,
equitable
I
for
think it
each
was about
individual.
equity, because that's why I was asking for it to be defined. And if you're telling me it's not, I'm hearing this leapfrogging and compression issue, which I'm still a little fuzzy about. When I've been thinking about equity, I've been thinking about folks who are lower paid than others. And if that's the case, then, oh, cool, I now understand that. Because I thought in previous conversations, in previous negotiations, that's why we did what we did. So we're just redefining what equity is. And equity is
Yeah.
folks who are in that mid-range. But let's also underscore, we were talking about a retention issue, and we shared some data tonight that shows that we're talking about who to retain and who's leaving more often. It's not the folks in that mid-range.
So I do think that there's a piece in that graph that you showed that just knowing who the people who left are, that looks like what you were showing us was years in the district, not years of service to the profession, right? So there are people who would be in the years 1 and 2 of years of service who are year 14, 15, 16 to the profession. That is,
And we can break it down.
yeah,
But-
I mean, I think that
and-
that's,
and let me
I
get to
think
the
that that's
bigger
a
issue, though.
thing. And I think, wait, let me finish up. Oh no, I lost it.
Hey, y'all, we're at 19.68. It sounds like you're at 7.5 times 4. That's close to 30%. So 19.68 and 30% is a huge gap. we got to figure out. You're telling us, without giving me a lot of details, that we can figure this out in our budget process. As a person who's been navigating this budget for a long time, along with the board and a lot of other folks, I've told you that we cannot. So I recognize that we have different perspectives and agreements on it. I've shared with you data. We'll share a budget presentation on Tuesday. All I have is everything we have, including our audit reports and our auditors, our external third-party auditors who are questioning the ways in which we're using fund balance, $8.7 million last year, and plan to do that this year, who are questioning about our bond rating. I mean, this stuff is complex. I hear you in wishing to say that we can afford this. I'm leaning on hundreds of years of expertise and auditors and a board that says we cannot. So that's just a disconnect, and that's fair. And I will say it one more time, and you said it, Chris, and I appreciate it. It is a great offer, and it's an offer that you rejected tonight. And we all seeing what's happening social politically. I hope that we can have this offer, whether it's 19.68 or even beyond, going forward. And that is going to be something that I'm worried about too. So I'm proposing that we pause tonight. I don't have authorization to talk about anything beyond 19.68 anyway. I'm being very transparent and vulnerable. So it's not much more we can talk about tonight. We have settled on all of our other contracts with other bargaining units that are in this organization.
Wait, please don't. So I was actually going to suggest that we have given the latest counter
I got
proposal.
it.
We have an agenda for next week due by Tuesday. So I think that, give
Can
us.
it be by Wednesday or Thursday? Because I meet with our board again on Tuesday. And I won't have an opportunity. Until I have additional authorization or
I mean,
we
we
can't
have a
talk
number of
about anything
things
else.
that were on this agenda.
We're gonna
we
put
can-
it on the agenda. We'll see it. I mean, we just brought you a counter proposal right here.
Yeah.
So yes,
Gotcha.
it's gonna be on the agenda. Now, we do have other topics on tonight's agenda. So we do still have things that we can talk about that are taking a completely different angle. Do people want a break?
I want one.
You want a break?
Yeah. How much time do we have left?
We got 23 minutes.
Ah,
We can't get into something else.
That
That
clock.
clock is wrong. It messed me up too.
is wrong.
Yeah, let's pause and we'll pick up the agenda next time.
Okay.
But I think that we're all clear about where we are, and I appreciate the clarity that has been provided tonight. 19.68, not working for y'all. You want 30. And your number is at 30 now, and we don't have a proposal because you rejected ours.
And we'd be grateful if the district commits to a step system up front.
Say that again?
We'd be appreciative if the district commits to a step system up front, perhaps right now. Would you offer us a step and lane system for our next contract?
We haven't agreed to a step lane system before. Right.
Right. So that's what we're asking. I would like to see a counter proposal that, and I'm going to avoid using the word works because that has tripped us up. You now know the problems. You know that we believe that a step and lane system is the way to solve the problems. We would like to see a counter proposal of a step and lane system at a percentage that you feel is reasonable, will solve the problems that we've presented, and is something that we can do within the tax cap based on your understanding of the budget. If you find a system that is not a step and lane salary grid system that you believe will also solve those problems, feel free to give us multiple counter offers, but we want to see a step and lane system. Our members have been so clear that this is what we need and that now is the time to get it. And we're ready to come back next week and continue the conversation
Let
about
me
that.
clarify now. A step and lane system at 30%, a step and lane system.
I just said, give us your counter proposal for a step and lane system at a percentage that you feel is fair, problem solving, and within the system of the budget that we can put before voters.
I think what we can do is give you a counter proposal that we think is fair and stays within our parameters. We cannot give you one that fixes the problems that you have said are from multiple years of contract negotiations.
Is
That's not going to happen.
that an unwillingness to solve the problems, or is that a lack of
Now,
belief
let's
that the
stop.
problems
Let's not get
exist?
into wordsmithing, because frankly, the proposal we shared, we felt was doing all the things. And you very clearly said no, and we're angry about it, Brian. So I get that.
I was
it's-
firm. I wasn't angry.
Maybe that's the wrong term. Yeah, when you shared, you said, no, this does not work in many ways. And I felt like it was, in some ways, it was off-putting, our approach to this.
I mean, it was a slightly firmer stance than I usually take.
I know, and that's,
I mean, I'm a
That's
very
a better way of
reasonable and
saying it.
polite woman,
So,
and
but you asked me to
sometimes
do
I
the
have,
same
and
thing
sometimes I have
again.
to use some teeth. And I mean, I'm a woman.
I wasn't talking about you. Anyway, we will, yeah, we're gonna continue to talk, but we got the big differences around the total dollar amount. And it's hard to back into any kind of proposal at that dollar amount because we can't afford it.
So bring us a counter proposal. Next week, we will continue this conversation and we will begin the discussion of length and scope of a teacher's professional day. And we'll begin it with a big picture conversation about what we're even trying to do with the length and scope of a teacher's professional day.
We're gonna start where?
We're going to start with the salary.
Okay, all right.
And then we're going to look at the length and scope of a teacher's professional day. And the slides that I would have presented today are linked in this agenda. So you can feel, I am not going to change them between now and then. Feel free to peruse them and do some homework before next week to give us a more fruitful discussion when we come to the table.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.